Seven's recharging, or she is until the echoing shouts wake her and she has a look around. They've gone now, of course, suggesting they were in her mind and that we're having a psychological episode. A trip to the mess hall has her throwing around food in disgust, a not uncommon response for those familiar with its chef. But this is different. She dismisses anything plant-based, but sniffing it out, finds some meat in the fridge and starts tearing at it. A shot of a reflection in some glass shows someone who looks decidedly Klingon doing the same, the implication being that this is her. Later on, we're all in a meeting where Kim is telling us that sensors have found a big old debris field. Seven, who seems to be back to normal now, recognizes it as the remains of something Borg. Janeway's curiosity doesn't stretch far enough to warrant investigating this, not with the potential for other Borg coming to take a poke around, and orders us to avoid it. Before the meeting ends, Neelix tells them about the disturbance in the mess hall, and we learn that this isn't the first time, either. They've not been able to figure out who it was, which is odd when you consider that they have sensors everywhere and Seven was wearing her comm badge when she did it, but let's ignore that for now. Tuvok doesn't seem that asked about it, and after asking Janeway, Neelix is given permission to fabricate locks for the food storage. Tuvok might not be able to figure out who did it, but maybe he's not the only one investigating. Naomi Wildman, Voyager's firstborn, is secretly tailing Seven of Nine and making notes. Not quite secretly enough, and Seven demands to know why she's being followed. Naomi explains that she's observing Seven because, although she's not Borg anymore, she still seeks perfection in the same way. If Naomi can do the same, maybe she can become the captain's bridge assistant, just like she wants to be. Far from being offended, Seven compliments her on her goal and they have a bit of a chat, before Seven hears those echoing shouts again and becomes someone else. She adopts the giggly mannerisms of a child, something that feels oddly discordant when played opposite a much calmer actual child. Regardless, Seven says she's bored and wants to have fun, asking if Naomi would like to play Cod. The game is sufficiently popular for Naomi to know what she's talking about, despite us never having heard of it before, and they both run to play it while holding hands. The game is played on a nice glossy surface, something that just happens to provide a reflection, and we're shown through it that Seven now has the appearance of a child. She tells Naomi about her 12 brothers and how she doesn't like the Borg until B'Elanna tries to call her. On the second attempt, Seven snaps back to reality, asking what she's doing in Naomi's quarters before leaving to report to B'Elanna. Totally normal behaviour that definitely shouldn't be reported by anybody concerned. B'Elanna has something to show her. She's detected a science wibbly and it looks Borg to her. Seven recognises it as a neural interlink frequency, essentially Borg brain Wi-Fi. I guess that's our culprit for the body hopping. B'Elanna sees something's a bit off with her, diplomatically telling her that she looks like shit, and Seven mentions her lapses in memory. Before B'Elanna can convince her to visit sickbay, we hear more shouty echoes, and Seven becomes the Klingon lad again. He's a traditional Klingon, which is to say he only understands fight mode and fuck mode, though that particular Venn diagram is frequently a circle. This is why he bites B'Elanna on the face before wanting a bit of fisticuffs. B'Elanna calls for backup before grabbing a tool to defend herself. A security team arrives, but they may as well have not bothered because they're shit at it, and Seven legs it. The bridge learns about what's going on and Janeway orders Seven to be shut in with force fields. It's not quick enough to prevent another guy getting knocked on his ass, and Seven grabs a gun before discovering the trap. Tuvok arrives on the scene with a mate, only to discover Seven curled up in a corner. She says something bad happened to the man and he needs help. Tuvok disables the force field and takes the gun from her as the shouty echoes return. Hello, this one's new. They're someone from Vulcan High Command, though display no curiosity at having appeared on a ship next to an unconscious man. They agree to visit sickbay, but don't get the chance. The shouty echoes are back, and so is that Klingon lad. An attack on Tuvok goes poorly, and Seven has a nap after receiving some yellow poop. We're shown a shot of some tech in space, and it must be Borg because it's got green on it. Seven wakes with a start to find herself in sickbay. Those echoes start again and Seven complains of hearing voices, accompanied by flashes of people in Borg alcoves screaming. The dog gives a flashy thing on her neck a poke and Seven settles down a bit, the voices fading. Some questions reveal that Seven remembers nothing after her chat with B'Elanna. Everything beyond that is blank. The doc thinks that this is because someone else was in control. Her brain wibblies have other brain wibblies in, apparently harvested from assimilated drones when they joined the collective and stored in her cranial implants. They're coming to the surface at random, and Seven thinks it could be because of the Borg Wi-Fi signal coming from that debris. Legging it won't help, as the signal has a fair old range, presumably meaning that this must be a recent debris field, or it would have been affecting her previously. With no real alternative, Janeway turns the ship around so we can go to the debris and sort shit out. Until then, she wants the Doc to keep an eye on Seven. Which is why he's following her down a corridor, wearing his mobile emitter. You know, the one he must have ripped from the skull of her adopted son's corpse a little while back. Bit awkward, I imagine, but she has the good manners to not mention it. Speaking of things to not mention, here's Neelix. He's heard about Seven's problem and wants to try and improve her mood. She snaps at his incessant twattery and tells him to bugger off, but before he does, he hands her a drawing Naomi made to help her feel better. Unlike Neelix himself, this is well received, and Seven tells him to pass on her thanks. Down in the cargo bay, we're going through some regeneration logs. She's been waking intermittently, but has no memory of it happening. Some of them have audio logs attached, and they appear to be recordings from the personalities she's carrying, each believing that they're making a personal log or a message. Seven's disconcerted by the discovery, partly at the loss of control and perhaps also at learning more about the people she helped to assimilate while a drone. The Doc reassures her that we can work through it, as Janeway calls to let her know we've arrived at the debris. Up on the bridge, we're taking a look at that green gizmo. Seven tells us it's the heart of a Borg D6, the bit in charge of drone communication and information updates, so basically the network hub. This one's on the fritz though, and is sending her bullshit orders, believing her to be a disconnected drone. Severing the connection improperly could fry her brain, which is clearly not ideal, but she believes she can shut it down properly. Unfortunately, that requires either teleporting it aboard the ship or staying here for multiple days. With the possibility of more Borg turning up, the latter isn't much of a choice, so Janeway tells Tuvok to teleport it aboard. I guess Kim must be on holiday, as that's his job. We'll stick a force field around it and throw it back out again if it starts to act dodgy. To engineering we go, where the Borg network hub has been strung up. Being so close is making the echo shout stronger, so the Doc fiddles with that neck gizmo some more. B'Elanna joins them, and after a touch of awkwardness, they begin work. There's something odd about this network hub though, and it's not just that the frame at one tip has changed now that it's a real prop instead of being computer-generated. A little investigation reveals it might have something to do with the fact that there's a virus in it, not in the data sense, but an actual biological agent, one that attacks tech. Seven says the Borg D6 got infected by it 3 days back after assimilating a shuttle from an alien race. We move to astrometrics so we can use big screen mode to learn more about them. This particular race was known to the Borg, as they'd already grabbed several billion of them. The shuttle contained some of the last survivors, and a cube was sent to mop them up. Seems inefficient to me, but maybe that's the Borg equivalent of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Anyway, Seven thinks that the drones would have been affected in the same way as her. The resulting chaos is probably what destroyed the D6, rather than the infection itself. As to the solution, Janeway thinks having a chat with any surviving members of the race that carried it would be a good start. Personally, I'm not so sure. If the Borg assimilated billions without issue, but this group carried something fatal to the collective, that sounds a lot like a deliberate state of affairs to me. Kind of like a dead man's switch. We can't stop you taking us, but we can make sure you pay for it. Still, there aren't a lot of other options, and Seven starts a scan for them. And just in time, too, as the Echoes are back, and they bring someone new with them. Seven's a Ferengi now, and takes a shine to the big screen, offering 20 bars of latinum for it. We manage to convince them to visit sickbay by mentioning that any treatment will be completely free. Once there, and after trying to sell us some new medical equipment, Seven is locked behind a force field while the Doc and Janeway have a chat. The Doc's concerned about the prolonged effects on Seven, suggesting her own personality could be lost in the crowd. One more pops out and asks Janeway if she knows anything about her son, Gregory, a lieutenant on a ship at Wolf 359. She buggers off and Seven returns. Janeway tells her B'Elanna's working on shutting down the Borg network hub, but Seven's understandably concerned. The voices she once craved shortly after being severed from the collective are now wearing her down, and she's not sure how much longer she can fight it. Just as well that we're ready to try and shut down the Borg network hub then. It's going well, until it isn't. The hub adapts and draws power from elsewhere, placing Seven in danger of being lost entirely. The attempt is stopped, but it's too late. The Doc reports that Seven's brain wibblies have completely gone. We've managed to find some of those aliens responsible for the initial infection, so we're going for a chat. While we're travelling to them, Janeway, Tuvok and the Doc are having a natter. The doc tells us that new personalities are emerging in Seven every few seconds, something that's eventually going to roast her brain. Tuvok suggests using Vulcan's psychic shenanigans to try and find Seven among the crowd, which seems like a bloody awful idea to me. Janeway thinks it'll be fine though and tells him to get ready. It'll take a couple of hours meditating to prepare, so we've got that long to try and get shit sorted ourselves. We've caught up with those aliens, so maybe they can help. We give them a call, one that's answered by two extras from the hit 1982 science fiction film Tron. As an aside, the main antagonist of that film would later go on to play the Cardigan officer in charge of torturing a certain French starship captain and, in so doing, become one of the most memorable complete bastards to have ever featured in Star Trek. But again, I digress. We explain what's happened to the Tron lad, but he already knows about it. See, they planned it. Popping over to Voyager, he tells us that the infection was a deliberate trap. They gave the virus to volunteers who allowed themselves to be assimilated in the hopes of spreading it among multiple ships. Called it. Obviously, Tron lad is unimpressed that we nabbed it. Telling him why doesn't elicit much sympathy, nor does it make him forthcoming with a treatment. They designed it to kill Borg. There was no reason to consider an off switch. B'Elanna thinks she has another plan to stop it from affecting Seven, but Tron lad doesn't care. He wants the Borg network hub back so he can return it to the debris, and he has more guns than us. Janeway points out that firing on us might damage the hub, only for Tron lad to point out that it survived the destruction of a Borg D6. I guess it's their version of a black box, too. Down in sickbay, Seven awakens, and it is Seven, much to the doc's surprise. She's in restraints as some of her visitors were a little bit punchy. The doc tells her about Tuvok's proposal that he's offered to do psychic shenanigans to try and help. She's not fond of the idea, but Tuvok thinks he can disconnect before it kills him if shit goes south, and she reluctantly agrees. She also tells the doc to thank everybody for their efforts before the shouting echoes return and he's forced to sedate her. As the Tron lads start pooping at us, Tuvok arrives in sickbay to start his shenanigans. The doc sticks a flashy thing on his neck to monitor him, but needn't have bothered as Tuvok orders him not to interfere. Tuvok does brain-linking things and appears in Seven's thoughts. He calls out for her, wandering through crowds filmed in such a way as to make taking screenshots a right pain in the arse, so thanks for that. Some thrashing about a bit in the real world prompts the doc to ask B'Elanna how long it'll take to shut down the Borg network hub. It should be done in a couple of minutes, unless we kaboom from getting pooped at before then. Up on the bridge, Kim tells us that we're taking a beating. He must have cut his holiday short because of the fighting. Speaking of which, Tuvok is having a brain fight with a brain Klingon and tosses him off a brain ledge. He spies Seven being dragged away by the crowd and follows her. Despite some sparks in engineering, B'Elanna manages to get the Borg network hub under control and switch it off. The brain people inside Seven's head all bugger off, and Tuvok grabs her as they wake up. We teleport the network hub into space and those Tron lads grab it before scarpering. Janeway decides doing the same would be a good plan, and we leg it in the opposite direction. Seven's back to normal after a week of recharging. She offers her thanks and is told she's fit enough to get back to work when asking how she can repay them. She agrees, though says she has a visit to make first. After giving Naomi a stack of homework that'll help her become useful as Captain's bridge assistant, she asks for something in return. Lessons on how to play Codiscot. Naomi smiles and agrees to teach her as we fly away. I didn't care for this one, and it's more a death of 1,000 cuts than one single negative. The central premise rubs me the wrong way for a start. Borg law has previously established that the collective deletes unnecessary data. For drones to have backups of multiple personalities makes no sense in this context. Even if that data was considered useful, such a level of multiple redundancy as we see here, where drones store potentially hundreds of backups, is deeply inefficient. The Borg network hub being the ongoing cause also feels like a flawed premise. We can't sever the link without risking damage, but just draining power on the hub rather than properly shutting it down is fine. Pulling the plug is grand, but we don't just shoot it or keep it stored in the teleport buffer until it degrades or we can shit it into a star. It's a poorly executed idea, and one that could have been avoided. If the network hub passed on the virus to Seven, we could still say we needed it aboard to learn more about the source. That could have sidestepped the plot flaws about shutting it down and preserved the confrontation with the Tron lads. We're left with the script that, at times, feels like it exists for the purpose of showing off Jerry Ryan's range. With a bit more care, perhaps that could have made for a memorable episode, but a little research shows that she says she was given very little time to prepare, being provided with footage of Klingons and Ferengi shortly before filming to learn their mannerisms. That the results are serviceable is a testament to Ryan, but a Ferengi that sounds like the Wicked Witch of the West isn't going to win any awards. While I'm whining, I suppose I should mention that Tuvok's nonchalance towards the food thefts felt out of character. A repeat offence that can only have been committed by a crew member is a security issue, and making a sarcastic retort was completely at odds with his professionalism, even when the target is Neelix. Any issue involving resources is a serious one, and him not being on top of it didn't ring true for me. It's a small thing, I'll grant you, but one that was quite jarring. Speaking of jarring, while I can see what the mind meld sequence was trying to achieve, I personally found it quite physically unpleasant to watch. You could argue that the low frame rate and lens fuckery helps set the tone, but that doesn't make it any easier on the eyes. Add in the strobing lights from earlier in the episode when we saw shots of the assimilated personalities, and the result is an episode that was a visual chore at times. When all this is added together, you have what was, for me, the lowest point of the season so far. To be fair, Season 5 has been pretty strong to date, and it's certainly no nemesis or projections, so it's still worth watching. Just perhaps not worth re-watching. End of episode.
What do they taste like anyway?
What do what taste like?
You know. Balls. You've been going on about me licking them for 2 weeks now.
I wouldn't worry about it. You said it's not your thing, and that's fine.
Don't you try that reverse psychology shit on me.
I'm not. I genuinely think you would gain no significant benefit from tasting your own genitals.
Stop it.
I mean, I'm sure it's just coincidence that literally every creature capable of reaching does it. Nothing special about it that would make every single one of them decide that'd be a thing they want to do.
You son of a bitch. So, is there a screen I can go behind or something?
Just here's fine. You know, so I can make sure you're doing it right. Woof.